Good afternoon, everyone. This is the meeting of the Personnel Board, Wednesday, September 6th. We have a few items to discuss this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, can you just note that this meeting is being recorded?
I was about to.
Oh, sorry.
This meeting is being recorded. We have 3 members in attendance. Katie Lang is on Zoom to take minutes for us as our secretary. Thank you, Katie. So present would be myself, Gary Whitehouse, Scott Yankee, and Mike Brown. And Tracy is on vacation. So we're going to start off with a discussion on the FMLA policy. And our interim HR director will
Former interim
presentation
HR,
on that.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Good to see everybody. You have in front of you tonight a proposed Family and Medical Leave Act policy. Based on my experience here from 2014 to 2019, this was probably the next policy we were going to be on deck to do. And upon returning, I noticed that with all of the transition happening, I felt like we maybe had lost a little bit of our process and procedure around FMLA. In my consulting over the last few years, I've done a lot of policy manuals for cities and towns, and this is, I would say, the top standard of FMLA policies that I've worked with. Not only does it spell out the law, but it helps to alleviate the confusion when someone has a medical issue or a family member to take care of, or a military member they want to take care of. We would simply just send them these confusing forms. So this kind of walks an employee through how do you determine if you're eligible, what are your reasons for leave, how do we calculate it, what is the notice requirement, how does your health insurance work, what is this, certification are we looking for? If you're out for a long time, if we need to recertify, what does that look like? It talks about paid versus unpaid leave, what happens to your benefits. It's just something that an HR director would sit with an employee and do. But a lot of times, we're dealing with employees who are under stress, or they're already gone because an accident happened or an illness. So having a policy that we distribute and that people will have on file that they can read, I feel like that's a value add to our current policies that we have here. And I mean, as you know, FMLA has been in existence since 1993, so this isn't anything new or cutting edge. It's simply putting all the information in one place for an employee who's seeking their federally protected family medical leave. So.
Now, is there anything in our policy or a suggested policy that is more generous than the state or the federal government would require?
No, we do have some of our collective bargaining agreements deal with FMLA a little differently, whether you accrue time when you're on paid leave or not accrue time, but this pretty much is the boilerplate for the federal law. And things that are specific to Foxborough are how we deal with your benefits, how we designate the rolling calendar year. We use a 12-month rolling calendar year. So those kind of things are specific to Foxborough and here, but generally it's really just a retelling of the law.
Yep, standard.
So it's for resource and documentation purposes, no changes being proposed really, right?
Yeah. And I think, we have a lot of, when department heads have an employee out, the misconception is that like HR walks around and takes attendance, like what police officer's out today, what council on aging employees out today. We don't know. So it's up to the department heads to let us know if someone's going to be out for an extended period of time so we can designate and tell them that they're on job protected leave if it's an event that qualifies under FMLA. So it's just kind of, I feel like this is a communication piece and will give some assurance to people who are seeking FMLA.
So I think it's a great idea and it's well done. I do have a can I click through? I read the
Yeah,
document.
please do.
So the reasons for leave starts with employees who have worked for the town for at least 12 months and at least 1,250 hours, which I have no issue with. The top part, the eligibility issue, doesn't talk about the 12-month requirement, it just talks about the 1,250. It seems like that 12 months should be up in the eligibility. So the eligibility says that you need to work 1,250 hours within 12 months, not that you have to be there 1,250 hours and 12 months. And in the second in the second reasons for leave, you're talking about both are required. If it isn't required both, then you wouldn't have to put in the eligibility, but you should probably rewrite that sentence. I'm not sure which one you really were looking for.
Yep, both are
that makes
required,
sense.
so,
So it would be an and?
yeah.
Okay.
Then on the both spouses working for the town, I was confused about the 26 hours. I didn't understand where that came from. I saw, I think you had 12 weeks where, if I took 12 and 12, it's 24 hours. I didn't know whether I'm missing, I might just be missing
What
something.
page is that on, Dan?
That's on
The
page
third page,
3.
there's a section called both spouses working
got
for
it.
the town. I don't even know if this happens actually, but when I read the 26 weeks, that second paragraph, employee eligible spouses are also limited to a combined total of 26. I don't know what that, I'm just asking, I guess, what is that from?
That's pretty much the way with, like, holidays wouldn't count, things like that. So instead of saying that it's 24 weeks, they say 26, just because if there are holidays or something else
So they're
included.
getting accounted for an extra week
Yeah.
each for holidays and,
So
okay.
say you're on FMLA and it's Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and we're closed, those
Yeah.
2 days wouldn't count towards your allotment. I think that's where the law states the 26th.
Yeah, it does sound a little confusing.
I just didn't know where it came from. I didn't understand. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So in the, page 5, I guess, recertification.
Yes.
Town may request the employee, blah, 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 blah. The following reasons demonstrate when the town may seek recertification. The employee requests an extension of leave. So the policy starts by saying you get this limited amount of FMLA time, 12 weeks. But now we're talking about extensions, like, but there's no sort of criteria for,
So-
it doesn't seem to me in here as to
Yeah,
why somebody would get an extension. It sort of says you only get 12.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it says you can get an extension, and I'm
so
not
the
sure what that.
extension is within the 12 weeks. So there's no such thing as more than 12 weeks unless it's for military caregiver leave. So what happens is, say you're going to need 30 days off because you're having an operation. We require that you communicate with us every 30 days to tell us, and then we get a form from the doctor that gives us your prognosis and your estimated return to work.
Yeah, sure.
And then we ask you, if it's more than 30 days that you're going to be out, that you check in with us within 30 days. And then, so if that's what would happen, is we may need a recertification. Your original paperwork said 30 days. Now we need you to recertify with the doctor that you're going to be out another 30 or another 12. So it's not over and above the 12 weeks, it's within the 12 weeks. Because very often, people don't take all 12 weeks at the same time. They may be taking care of someone or just need, 2 weeks for a surgery or something like that. But if it goes beyond 30 days, we need to have some communication.
No,
Yeah.
I would assume so. I think that's a good, that's proper thought. Okay. I think those were my questions.
Those are good. No, we'll make those edits to page 1.
Scott, do you have any?
No, I don't have anything else.
All right, I'll accept a motion to recommend this to the acting town manager, who I might add is also present this evening. Thank you, Paige.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Can I ask 2 follow-up questions now on this? So because I'm only here for a short amount of time, I assume that we're going to incorporate this into the policies at some point, the current Town of Foxborough policy document.
Right, I was assuming once the
Yep.
Board of Selectmen approve it, it'll get.
Yep.
Right.
So that'll be great, thank you. And then the other thing that goes along with this, which is an operational thing, but I just kind of wanted to let you know that we're working on it, is there's a form that an employee could give us that says they're looking to take FMLA. It's kind of a request form.
Formalize it, sure.
It's not considered the federal form, but it's sort of an internal processing thing. So we're going to do that to go along with the approved policy, just to make paperwork a little easier on people.
Yep, that's a good idea. Okay, the next thing on our agenda will be a discussion on remote work policy. Once
Yes.
again, Mary Beth, if you would.
Well, I wasn't sure if you were going to be ready to make any sort of definitive decision tonight. I gave you samples. I wanted to see I wasn't here during COVID. I know that some people have worked out remote work arrangements, and coming back, I found that it's a little bit unsettling that, it's not spelled out who gets a deal and who doesn't to work remotely. And I always feel like it keeps us out of, it's a risk management thing to have it spelled out and have a process for requesting that you want to be on leave, just so that we're not discriminatory. It's a level playing field. And it's a discussion between the department head and the employee with the town manager's approval. So I wanted to just show you what's out there for two communities that I respect greatly. They've sort of thought out this remote work policy really well. And I wanted to give you those samples and just get your feedback on what you think, and would this work for Foxborough? Would one of these work better than the other, or is it a hybrid?
Well, I, for one, I appreciate the fact that you said we could probably think on this till the next
Yeah.
meeting.
Yep.
Because I find it very confusing how how COVID has brought this all about.
Yep.
And I'm concerned that it's too easily abused. And it's always at the convenience of the employee, when it should also be at the convenience of the municipality, the town.
Yep.
Right? I mean, I see too many, I know a lot of people that work from home, and they don't even put their pants on all day. And I don't want to make it just a convenience thing for people. I don't have to get dressed and go to the office.
Yeah.
I think as a municipality, we need to be here. Our people need to be here. I understand the situation. Somebody could be sick for a couple of weeks, but we really need their input, and they can do it remotely. That's fine. That works for the convenience of the town as well.
Right.
But just somebody that's saying, no, I don't want to come in because I'm afraid of this, I'm afraid of that, and they're going to work from home for 6 months, I'm not a big fan of that. I think it's been abused in the past, and I'm afraid that it could continue to be abused.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, have any thoughts?
Do we have a lot of it happening? I mean, are there 2, 1, 20, 80?
I don't think
know.
it's 20, but I'm aware of, things that people that are working from home and people that are requesting to do so going forward for different reasons. And I continually worry about the risk you put your town at. If you can tell one person that they can, and then the other one might have a disability or be in a protected class, and you say they can't, suddenly we're not treating everybody equally. So I think there are some cases of people who work from home or have had previous deals to do so. So I think we just need to clean that up and make it a level playing field.
Yeah. No, I appreciate the need for some
Yeah.
brackets around it. Have there been any issues with employees who have said, I can't do it and I want to, and do we have any examples of that? Or
In my
is it
few
quiet?
weeks back here, this wasn't even an issue
not
when I
aware
was
of it?
here.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not aware of it.
Yeah, okay.
But I think until you go and have the conversation with the people who are either requesting it or doing it, then that becomes a
Yeah.
problem. So I think having a policy ahead of, that would be helpful.
I can speak to an example last week where there was a department where someone's spouse had COVID, and so there was concern as to whether that person should be in the office, and we don't have a remote work policy, and the current guidelines don't require quarantining, so pretty much said, no, wear a mask if you're not comfortable. That said, I know the department was very worried. It ultimately did result in a couple COVID cases in the department. Had we had a remote policy, it might have been a little more clear-cut where the department head could have made that decision based on their information. But for me, at that time, I didn't want to open a can of worms where, suddenly so-and-so's spouse has, like just kind of without parameters and without guidelines and that level playing field. I went with the health guidance, which there isn't a quarantining thing, and we sort of rolled the dice. We did end up, like I said, with a couple COVID cases. So, and I don't know that it's always COVID. I mean, some cases are, long-term arrangements and such, so it's all over the place. It can be COVID, and I feel like those in short term are a little more clear-cut. In that instance, it might have been nice to be able to allow this person, if their department head determined it made sense for their workload, to work from home, to keep the employees safe and feeling safe. But without the guidance, I just didn't want to open that can of worms.
What did we do 2 years ago? Because there were some remote,
There was a
Work being
specific
done.
COVID policy, I think.
Yeah, I don't know that it was it ever formally adopted by the,
I
I mean,
don't know.
I think we
I
just,
thought
everybody
it
just.
was formally adopted by the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, I think
They
there
were
was
they were
something on
talking
the
about
website
town laptops going home and
back,
programs.
back 2021.
Well, that was probably 2020 when we all got sent home. In March of 2020, we all got sent home, and we
Yeah.
did suddenly get laptops, and I think that was probably under the state's emergency order. They probably had some language where they adopted
Yeah.
that.
And then we had to do the 25% capacity, so not everybody could work in
Yeah.
one department. Yeah, so,
But I don't think that's on the books today.
No.
That's not something we have in our
No.
policies today.
and this, if you look at, I specifically like the Needham policy, although it's lengthy. It has that whole ad hoc thing. Someone has like a daycare emergency, and they were just supposed to be working on a budget, and they weren't front-facing. Sure, maybe we can make them, allow them to work from home that day. So it has that flexibility that you would look for too, because you want to have a heart, and you want to, in this day and age of recruitment and retention being so challenging, we want to be flexible, but we remember we're a public, service, we're a government, we need to be open for the people.
Right,
as
and I
well.
understand where you want to have a heart, but when it comes down to the reasoning being because of a daycare emergency, I think that's now just for the convenience of an employee,
Yeah,
and I don't think that's a
and that's what
valid
personal
reason,
time is
personally.
for, right, that's what.
Everyone
personal
has these, and they don't have the luxury of being able to
Yeah.
work from home.
Yeah, so,
That would be a
In that
concern.
instance, just to play the devil's advocate, I mean, sometimes it could benefit the town, because if that instance, like Mary Beth said, that would be a personal time thing. But what if that budget is due that day, and your department head is like, I don't care how you do it, something like that. Like, even if you have to work from home, get it done for me, otherwise they're taking the day off, and it can't be done till Monday. So like, in certain scenarios, you
Right.
might end up where they go, sorry, I can't work, and then.
That's when it's up to the advantage of the town and that
Yep.
department to make that
Correct.
decision.
Right.
So I think we have to allow
Yeah.
something like that in there for that purpose.
yeah, so if you can review this between now and your next meeting, look at, some of those specific things. I think the Needham one does it really well. The Wellesley one is good is also, but there's also a good form attached to the Needham one. They seem to do everything very soup to nuts organized. So if you would,
I'm pretty familiar with these things, and I don't have an issue with it, particularly myself personally. I mean, I think it's well-structured, some of these policies around, manager has to approve it, it has to be for designated work, can't be phase-fing, I think those things were in these two policies as I scanned through. The question point I had was more on last year we had other policies in front of us, like mobile policy, mobile phone, and
Right.
IT. I don't know, I can't remember what's out there in addition to the other policies. These two policies get into the IT framework a little bit, and they start talking about personal equipment and town equipment and security. And I think I'd be more worried about that kind of stuff than I would, the supervisor saying, yes, that'll work for me. And do we know that, like, what we have is secure and that it's, and it marries up to whatever IT policies are also out there that need to be kind of conformed with. I know, like, personally in our shop, it was corporate sort of side business. Like, we had no equipment that you could use that you could attach anything to. It was impossible to save a document
Yep.
to your equipment, to put a fob in or a disk or anything. You could not do that at all. It was just
Yeah.
prohibited because they were afraid of losing data
Yeah.
from peace. And that may be covered in a different one, I just don't know.
Yeah, so
So it's a
the-
question.
The town does use a VPN, which is like a protected login
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
So if you have access to one of our sensitive issues like Munis to do payroll or whatever, there's a whole bunch of security around.
Yeah, so the concern there is like, that's how we got into our unit two. The concern is that then the employee then has access, and can they then take, with that access, copy things down to whatever medium or print them in their own house or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you end up losing control of data.
Right.
You know, I don't know what's confidential and not confidential. I'd have to
Yeah.
think through that separately.
No, that's a good point. I'm not sure if the computer usage policy has changed since I've been here. But I did see a draft of a cell phone policy, so if I'm still with you when you meet again, we'll bring that one back and take a look
Yeah.
at it.
We can check also with IT, I think, right,
Yep.
on this, and just make sure. I
Mike?
have heard anecdotally, and I don't know if it's only public safety, but they cannot put any thumb drives or anything. In fact, it's a source of frustration, but obviously it's a
We're
security
all
issue.
frustrated as hell too.
I haven't
Quite
checked.
honestly,
My
because
computer
we
that I'm
had-
using here, I can't,
Yeah, we
Yeah,
had
we
tons of people that didn't like it either, but, you know, it
Yeah,
was
it's
sort of
the
like
new
the risk
world.
of having
yeah.
somebody's, I don't know what, you know, payroll data or something like that for the town. Well, it's
Yeah.
kind of public here, but
Right.
you might make choices and things about your family information might be there, your healthcare, et cetera.
Right.
That all of a sudden they escape and, you know, I haven't done a data security, you know, profile here, but
Yeah.
there might be data that you can't,
Well,
you
we
don't
can-
want to lose.
We can check with IT on that and get you some reassurances.
Yeah.
Is Jack Dolan still available
Mike?
for consultations?
We're currently not under contract with him due to some procurement issues. We have to go through procurement process. We can't renew after 3 years without approval, so that was discovered. So
Is that something you're going to work on?
we're looking into it. Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things on my
'Cause he-
list.
when it came to policy stuff, he was a wealth.
It was great,
He was, yeah.
yeah.
Good to know.
Just a question on this. Do most employees that would fall under the remote work policy have laptops from the town?
A lot of them do now. I don't know that answer. I know in my, you know, when I started in March 2020, when we got sent home, I was definitely working on my own personal laptop, and now I do have a work laptop. I know there's a handful of them in the town manager's office.
Yeah, there's sometimes a department laptop you
Yeah,
can take.
so and I know planning, land use planning, they have laptops, so I can't answer for every department, but I know that there are a lot more, and there are some available, like, right now, my office could loan one out or two, and I believe IT could as well. So I think we're much more equipped now, but whether I can say every single person in town hall, or every eligible person would, I don't know yet, I'd
A
have to
good
check on
question for
that.
Chris. If you ever have somebody working from home, do you have laptops for everybody?
Most of my staff, it doesn't work from home.
Yeah.
They have to be here in the field.
No, I mean like your office staff.
Same thing in 2020, all the office staff did end up with a laptop. None of them work remotely. They all come to the office at this point. You know, occasionally, we might have somebody who, again, is sick or but has something they need to get done. The other thing is, Munis can only be accessed while on the town's network. So you have to remote in two-factor authentication, so that security's there. The town is working to move to Microsoft 365, so that'll be another layer of security where all of the town's data, all of our files will then be stored through Microsoft 365, accessible again through that two-factor authentication. The insurance company is actually pushing this year for another level of security on all of our equipment. So anytime you log in your email, you have to authenticate. You have, like, if it's on my phone, I have 8 hours of access to my email without having to re-authenticate, and then it shuts off. The laptops will be the same way. All the school computers are gonna be the same way. So the security side of it is definitely being pushed to the limits.
That sounds-
And again, beyond.
It sounds like it's all very heavy acknowledgement of who is accessing is the right person, and that's excellent. I'm not an expert in this field. what I've been told by our IT folks back in the day was they were also concerned about what that person might do themselves, because person to person, they might be an employee, but, you know, if they took down, I don't know, some data that you didn't want, and then, you know, published it or sold it or
Shared it
whatever.
where they
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, and again, I mean, the majority of what we do is all public information. It's all accessible by the public if needed. There are, you know, obviously HR issues and some other things that are not. But again, all of that stuff is stored on Munis and can only be accessed while on the town's network. So even if I'm on my town laptop at home, I have to remote into my desktop to get onto Munis. And I'm only then viewing it on my laptop. I don't actually have access to it on my laptop.
Good.
All right, thank you, Chris.
Mr. Chairman, Katie wants to say something. Paul, she's been unable to.
Yes, Katie.
Sorry. So, Mike, going back to your question, it was September 14th of 2021. You guys saw the electronic communications and computer use policy. You had seen that before. You guys saw it at that meeting, and then you actually voted on it and endorsed it December of 2021. So that was put into the personnel and policy guide, and that's where you did discuss, you know, no one would be able to use their personal laptop, you know, of course, from what you were stating, you know, to take information, put it on a zip drive. And that's where Mike had everyone that was going to ever be working from home have a laptop going home with them.
Excellent. I remember doing policies.
Yeah,
I just didn't remember which ones they were. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie.
Sure. Sorry.
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense to have a policy around this, and there are cases where remote work makes sense and benefits both the person and the town. So I don't think this is for Foxborough employees, it's not like you're recruiting from out of state or long distances for full remote work, but based on facts and circumstances, there are occasions where it makes sense.
Okay, good.
I agree.
So do you think for the next meeting you'd be ready to,
I think we could plan on. Do you
Yeah.
guys agree?
Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe
meeting.
you can send me feedback on which direction you're leaning in so I can draft a policy for you to look at that fits Foxborough, you
Okay,
know?
we can do that.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's all that I have. Thank you.
Okay, so our next agenda item is DPW Director's going to wants to make a department structure change, and he's going to present to us. Chris Gallagher, the floor is yours.
Hello. For anybody that doesn't know, or maybe watching home, my name's Chris Gallagher. I'm the Public Works Director. Have been thinking a little while now about the structure of the DPW. First created probably about 12 years ago now. It used to just be highway, tree, and park, and then water and sewer were separated under two different superintendents. They were merged together into a Public Works Department. When I got hired 9+ years ago, I was hired as the town engineer, was promoted a few years back now, and I've been thinking about the structure for a little while and how to improve that. Some of this is I look internally at what we've been doing in Foxborough, as well as looking at our surrounding towns and some of my counterparts and their structures and how they've been functioning for a number of years now, some of these other towns. So one of the things I'm looking to do, really two changes, kind of minor in scale. They're not adding bodies to the department, but they're really major in operation for me, where the first change would be to take the town engineer position and actually promote that position to an assistant director of public works / town engineer. So they would keep that town engineer function, but they would also take on day-to-day operation responsibilities, HR responsibilities, and then really get into some of the administrative paperwork side of things that I'm currently dealing with by myself, with some of the administrative staff keeping me on task. So it's a small change. Again, we have a town engineer now. I would like to promote that staff member to an assistant director level position. It would put him directly below me, which he is now, but he would put him above some of the other supervisors I have. You do have the existing org chart as well as a proposed org chart. So it takes the town engineer, promotes him under me and above the water superintendent, equipment maintenance supervisors, tree and park supervisor, highway supervisor, and then the GIS mapping technician, which he currently has a direct supervisory responsibility for now. Really, it's Foxborough's doing a lot. When Paige asked me to really quantify why I was asking for this position, I sat down and looked at all of the capital infrastructure work we're doing in the next 2 to 3 years. A lot of it grant funding. The federal and state grant paperwork is drowning me, I will say that. And really trying to incorporate that into the rest of my day-to-day responsibilities is just not working to the level it should be. We have roughly $40 million worth of infrastructure projects, both federally funded, locally funded, state funded, ARPA money, SRF funding, all within the next 24 to 36 months, which is a major undertaking. Each one of those projects is probably a full-time staff member for any major company, and we're doing that in-house right now with myself and Lance as the town engineer. So that's really the first thing. I'm looking to promote him, the town engineer position. It's currently a steelworkers grade 9 position. I'm looking to move that to the non-union salary wage chart at grade 11. That's in line with the assistant police chief and assistant fire chief positions. Similar departments structures where they both have roughly 40 employees. DPW has 40 employees. They each have a second in command. Really, I'm looking for that to be part of our department structure. On the basic levels, it's nice to have somebody responsible to back me up when I'm not here. I do take some time off occasionally, and as much as my phone rings and I answer and emails and texts and everything else while I'm away, it sometimes I'm out of touch, and it's nice to have that dedicated person who's responsible when I'm not here. Also, middle of the night, again, if my phone doesn't ring for whatever reason, there's somebody else to back up and answer those phones. Emergency situations, we have storms throughout the year, whether it's hurricanes or snow emergencies, and having a second in charge just in case for whatever reason I'm not available is important for the department structure. So that's the first piece that I'm looking for, and really I think the one that is pertinent here. The second position I am looking to create really does fall under the town manager's purview to make this change, but I do want to talk about it tonight. Within the office staff, the administrative staff, between the water and the general fund, the highway side, again, I'm looking to continue the merger of the Public Works Department. We have, since we started, a very separated staff of water administrators and highway general fund administrators, and really looking to blend those two together, do some cross-training within the existing staff. But with that, I would like to create an office manager position that would actually, again, be an internal promotion from one of our staff members. Wouldn't be adding any bodies. Again, would come with an increase, would stay in the Unit B Steelworkers classification. I'm proposing it goes from a grade B3 to B5, and really have some more oversight, have oversight over that administrative staff across the department as a whole, and pull everybody together. We're actually getting ready to hire another coordinator within the department, and my intention is that coordinator will function for the entire DPW, not just water and sewer under the enterprise fund, and potentially have a cost savings there in the future where we're not backfilling another position, if this, in my grand scheme, all works the way I'm envisioning it working. So, those are kind of the two changes I'm looking to make. Again, they're both internal candidates. There's no change in headcount at this point in time. We are looking at just promoting internally, restructuring a little bit so that those two staff members would have responsibility over other staff. And, I know we're presenting to the select board on Tuesday night. This was, in our minds, the first step before bringing it to them next week.
And this is all funded within your current budget.
This would all be funded within our current budget.
That's a big thing.
So Chris, I heard no additional staff, but I looked at I don't know the existing portfolio you have, but I looked at the existing and I looked at the proposed. It looks like there's a couple of heads in the proposed that aren't in the existing unless there are jobs in the existing that aren't filled, and then that's why they're not on the chart. So you just talked to one, I think, the coordinator, right? There's two coordinators on the existing, the chart it says one, I believe, if I'm under the department administrator, there's account coordinator and system specialist. Here it says department coordinator 2.
Yep,
So that looks like an extra, and then,
So there are actually, if you look at the existing org chart, which is that mustard colored one, I don't know where
Yep.
that came from, but
Yep.
Under the water superintendent, you have a department administrator, a system specialist, and account coordinator. And then if you look over to the right, next to the town engineer, under the DPW director, you have a department administrator and a DPW coordinator. So you have two coordinators, two administrators. We're looking to combine those, so we would still have two department administrators, we would still have two department coordinators, one of which is actually, I pulled the existing org chart out of the budget book from last year, which last year's budget, we only had one account coordinator under water. In this current fiscal year budget, we actually have two in that position funded
so
by
maybe
water and
that's-
sewer.
maybe it's all on that
That's the
one.
one. Yeah,
I
that's the
added
one
all the
where you're
heads that
not.
were under you, and just out of curiosity, it came with 41 in the proposed and 39 were in the existing, so I don't know where the other two. So the other one was in the highway area, HEO, you have 5, and then labor drivers 2.
Yep, so that was,
And the other one, you
yeah.
have HEO 6, and so one's 7 and one's 6, I guess
So,
that's a question.
yeah, so again, the org chart, existing org chart was from last year's budget book, where we had 6 in highway. We did add a laborer driver position in the current fiscal year budget, so
So that was in the review that we did?
that was
Just
proposed.
as part of the budget?
Yeah, so that
was
was.
approved,
yeah.
okay.
It's a good catch.
This was my old job, I'm sorry, but this is what I did for a living.
Good.
But yeah, so those two positions, the heavy equipment operator or the highway division currently has those positions as
Okay.
well as the.
They're in the
water.
budget,
Yeah.
okay, that's good.
Yeah.
But the last thing I had a question on is, so you're promoting the engineer, forget Lee?
Lance.
Lance, I'm sorry. Is there anybody else who would have thought they were, like, I mean, often you open a job and you kind of do this search type of thing, and fairness, et cetera, all that.
So the way that job description's written, it requires a professional engineering license.
Okay,
Lance and I are the only two on staff that have that.
okay.
So there's nobody else
All right.
existing that would qualify for that.
And nobody would think that,
Right.
correct, okay.
And that's, different from a lot of the other towns around us. A lot of the other towns, their assistant DPW director is separate from their town engineer. So they actually have a town engineer separated. Some towns, the engineering department is separated out completely from Public Works, and they run on their own. Others, they fall under DPW, and they have a staff of, a town engineer, an assistant, plus another civil engineer or GIS technician.
Would think it an advantage to have the engineer who's thinking about the mechanics of things and stuff actually supervising the operation too? Is that
We
an
work well
advantage?
together now. When it was, water was over there and highway was over there, the thought of, hey, I'm gonna pave a road this year, but we need to fix a water main on it, didn't happen.
Wasn't one
So
person
now,
saying,
now that
no.
does,
Yeah.
Lance, Bob, and myself all sit, within 12 feet of each other in the office, so we coordinate pretty heavily on what we need to do.
Great.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just offer
Yes.
up. So I do have the authority to do this reorganization, and, but we did want to follow past practice and, come to the boards. And, there has been a question raised as to what comes first, the select board or this board. We wanted to take advantage of this meeting tonight, and why I supported this is that I've had the unique perspective having been in the land use side of things. If you recall, I wrote a lot of the grants that have buried Chris. And it was really brought to light this June 30th, the end of our fiscal year, when we started, Marie, who's very thorough in finance, started looking at reimbursements and whatnot. And there were a couple things flagged that poor Chris, had to scramble paperwork-wise. Like he mentioned, the ARPA paperwork and all the reimbursement paperwork from the state is onerous, and it's only getting worse. We have the Walnut Street project that we've pieced together $5.5 million, and that's great. We're all celebrating and how great it is to get all these grants, but there is a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And if the problem is they have to do the work and pay the bills and then get reimbursed. So the risk to the town without doing the paperwork properly is that we've already paid the bills and then we're left holding the bag without the reimbursement. So that reimbursement and procurement process is incredibly strong. In fact, procurement, we've been warned for the ARPA funds is even more urgent. So we've been working closely with finance. So I think that was the first moment I realized, because I had a bit of panic thinking, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to get that money back? We did, and all was fine. But again, that's another reason, not just Lance stepping up, to share the responsibility. I mean, Chris right now is kind of the guy. He's the buck stops with him, and that's it. And Lance is under him, but doesn't really carry the level of responsibility. That it's just not, that's not his job. But then the office, what's the office manager position? That position would then also assist with this procurement and all this voluminous paperwork that Chris is dealing with. Because if you think about what Chris does, they deal with what was it, a septic truck today that leaked over on Wall Street. They had to deal with that. Water line breaks, emptying the trash, getting the fields ready, repaving roads, building water. Making sure his employees don't get hurt. So it really is, and it's all been Chris's single responsibility. So I really do think we're asking too much of Chris, really, and he doesn't complain, and he handles it well. But when you start seeing a concern that we might leave money on the table, or someone might get injured, or again, Chris can't get for whatever reason. Where'd you go? He went out west somewhere. Yellowstone, and he had no cell coverage. That's tough because there really is no chain of command under him, under the current structure. So for those reasons, I strongly support this. I think it's important that we protect Chris. And, it is a tough climate out there. I know Mary Beth said that she tried to fill this position in Rentham, and it took 1.5 years to fill it. So this is something we have, a known commodity. We've all worked with Lance. We know he's great. We don't want to lose him. And so I think it's important that we continue to nurture our employees, and we make sure we give our current employee, the support he needs. So for those reasons, that's why we're kind of moving this along now and not waiting to the next budget cycle. Plus, it's revenue neutral, so he's able to carry. That was the main thing. He could carry it in his current budget and had a good solution.
Yeah.
But I wanted to provide a little context on why I was a supporter of this.
Yep.
And if I can just make an observation I've been out for the last 5 years doing, or 4 years doing consulting, and I do a lot of class and comp studies and organizational studies for communities, big and small, and this structure is what you see out there. Having a DPW director, when you look at police and fire being the equivalent size, Chris is managing our major department, and to not have an assistant, I just have not seen, except for teeny tiny towns, not to have an assistant in place. We're catching up with the way things are done.
Paige, do raise an interesting side question. I asked, I forget which department it was, there was a budget question. Somebody was telling me that their job was largely they spent on grants and trying to find money. And I asked them, I said, does anybody centrally coordinate this? Are you on your own? Like, this person's doing it, that person's doing it, this person? Depending on whether it's aging or library, or, I don't know. There's probably grants, I'm unaware of it, but across all sorts of things. Has that ever been thought of or considered as to whether or not?
Well, thank you for asking, because Chris could attest to the fact that we're just starting to kick off a grant tracking program, and it's very basic, it's Excel right now. But Marie has asked for that, because as Marie's come on board, and, she's not always in the loop. I get a grant, and I don't automatically, before I go to pay a bill, I don't necessarily think of sending it to finance. And I don't know about you, Chris, but, it's a lot of steps, and you might not remember that. So we are centralizing grants now. We're now getting trained to make sure the minute we sign a contract, we send it to procurement, and they're running a much tighter ship. And now we are asking and starting to, it's just starting, to keep track of all these grants out there, because it's a feel-good thing, but when push comes to shove, it is actually a lot of work, and it's to the benefit, most of it very financially beneficial to the community, but you have to do the paperwork, and you have to make sure you close it out and run it correctly. So that is something we're getting a handle on right now.
Yeah, and I was even asking about the actual identification of potential grants, like how do you even keep track of it? Like is there anybody who's just constantly sort of scrapping at because it seems to me to be multiple places to get money from, if you're aware of them. I don't know how you guys all do that, but
it's mostly subject matter experts. Like Chris will hear about water grants because he's, in the DPW organizations, the water organizations. I'll hear about the planning ones. There's a little overlap with us. I'll get construction ones and then throw them to him. I do the fun part. He does the hard part. But generally, if the library or council on aging, they're doing them because they hear about them through their, they're on the mailing list or whatnot. So it really is hard to get us centralized because they're everywhere. The state doesn't have a good means of kind of keeping track of it. So it's really up to us as individuals, and that's why it's so important for us to communicate with finance, because we are all kind of on our own doing this. And then, we're like, great, we got a grant, and then poor Marie's trying to figure out, or the funny thing is sometimes she'll get money in, and she'll say, we just got, $100,000 from the state. Does anybody know where this came from? And we're like, oh, that might be my grant, and we're trying to track that down. So we're trying to get a handle on that. It's a good problem to have, but it is something, the more grants you get, the more unwieldy it can get, and Marie has to spend time chasing it and checking up on us.
I appreciate it. Okay.
Is there ever, in maybe a larger municipality or city, is there ever a position that's devoted to grant writing?
Yes.
Where do you start to consider that?
I don't know. I don't think we're there. I mean, heck, you want to give us a grant writer, we'll take it. But I don't know that there would be enough. It's probably when it becomes such a full-time job. Like right now, actually, I have a big grant due on September 15th, and I don't know how I'm going to get it out. I could use one today. But I don't know yet. It's like benefiting, again, I feel like police, fire, and DPW probably need assets more than a grant writer right now. So we're not quite there, but I could see where as you get larger, you would want that. Or even a part-time grant writer, where as a resource, like sometimes you just again, I know what I want to do by the 15th, and if I could just say, hey, can you help me out and get going on this and start it, and then I could tweak it, that would be a great help, but we haven't gotten that organized.
Not that level.
No, not yet, but it is something if I could put on my wish list, because it would be a great help, but, again, that also comes with capacity issues. I mean, someone was talking to me yesterday about grants for sidewalks, and I just said, well, you have to understand, first of all, in my new position, I'm not having the time to write the grants, but I don't know how much more Chris, he can handle it, but it's like, he's got Walnut Street, he's got, Sprague Road, he's got a lot on his plate, so there, you have to be a little bit careful of what you bite off, because then you have to do the work and all the paperwork, so we have to make sure we don't just go after everything. We have to be a little strategic sometimes, because we're getting good at it, and we kind of get them a lot, so, we have to balance that, knock on wood.
We could make it through a town meeting without hearing about sidewalks again. I'd be happy.
I don't think so.
Chris would too.
Hold your breath.
I wouldn't hold exactly. Stay tuned to the select board meeting. There'll be a presentation on the sidewalk survey.
Chris, just one more question out of pure curiosity. The office manager, that whole team kind of oversees the whole group, right? So they kind of coordinate between all of them. Is there an advantage of having that under the assistant versus under yourself?
I think the way I structured it, was to make sure that the office manager, again, if I'm not around, has somebody to
to-
report to. I mean, the way we're structured, the way we sit, we're all very close. It's, everybody can hear what everybody else says, so we're a pretty close group. And we all talk with each other. You know, usually if one person has something to bring forward, there's 2 or 3 people that are involved with the conversation. The idea is to keep, Lance in the loop with everything that's happening anyway, and get him involved in that administrative side of things. And
All right.
I think having, again, this was the way I proposed it. I will still be heavily involved in all day-to-day functions just by my own virtue, and our space.
Yeah, no, I was just
Yeah.
curious. Mary Beth, it sounds like you see it this way normally anyway.
Yeah, especially, when you have, the big 3 are police, fire, and DPW, and if, you have a structure with an executive, police chief, fire chief, and they have an assistant, I can't imagine why DPW wouldn't.
But having the office manager
the office manager position?
Under Lance.
Yeah, I think because
like-
typically the assistant would be doing the evaluation, the performance evaluation, all of that. And then any issues or whatever would go up to Chris. I think you need that direct line to the assistant. Yeah.
Lance has managed before?
Lance is highly qualified. His background in the private sector engineering world, his time in Sharon, what we've been working on here the last 3.5 years, as well as his educational background. He just finished his master's in public administration, which is a heavy HR
Okay.
program.
Sometimes managing is a little different than technical understanding and knowledge, that's all I'm asking you. Okay.
Yeah, I've been feeding him,
Yeah, okay.
some of these internal projects where he's got to, build the team and work within to fix a problem and move forward with things. And the team respects him, and it's been going well.
Good. Nice.
Any other questions? I'll accept a motion to recommend this.
Moved. So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Right.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Chris.
Thank you, Paige and Mary Beth, for your assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Need formal approval on the minutes?
I have the July 10th printed. Does somebody want to see those?
You have those?
Do you have those?
That was probably the last meeting.
Right. I've already,
I'm the
I've
only one
already
who hasn't seen
seen
them.
it.
I looked at my inbox, I couldn't find them. I had all the other docs. Ones I mentioned.
And just so you know, I think Mary Beth hopes to get another meeting together, but before.
Yes, I was hoping
Mid-October or
we could meet again in October, if you don't mind, because I had one more policy I wanted to bring forward, and I also wanted to confirm the remote work policy with you. So,
And your mid-October is when Mary
yeah,
Beth is.
I mean, I can always come back, but I'm going to be gone for a big chunk of 3 weeks, so for continuity's sake, while I'm still here, if we could meet first or second week of October would be ideal.
Brings back memories. He used to force us once a month every week.
That's what I was like, I don't know if they're going to want to meet that much. She's like, I used to meet with them once a month.
We always
It was a
did.
tight.
Once a month.
I had a run in, they called me last minute.
We got a lot
We
accomplished.
got a lot of policies done back in the day.
Yeah, we did.
We can move this, Gary. You can move the July.
I will accept the motion.
I'll move the approval.
Okay, second?
Second.
Scott? So, been motioned and seconded to approve the minutes of July 10th, 2023. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, aye.
And then Gary, I'm not sure, I don't know if we'll be able to approve the February 15th meeting minutes because I don't think you were present and
Correct.
Monica's no longer on the board. So I'm just not sure how that
Correct,
works.
and we're missing a copy of it anyway, so we'll have to put that off to the
Okay.
next meeting.
Okay, sure.
I couldn't find the minutes, Katie, and and I looked at Gary said it was a prior email. I couldn't find it. Maybe it's just lost in my email somewhere. But that's why.
Oh,
just
sure, I
grabbed it.
apologize. I'll resend those as well. And then I do think The only remaining outstanding policy was the cell phone policy that you guys had put forth, and then it was Bill, I believe, had some edits to that policy, so I don't think that was ever fully approved by this board and the selectmen.
Okay, and the previous policies that we did approve that would concern remote work, would you send us that policy again, please? The one on the cell phones and the laptops and all that? The one we approved a
Sure,
couple
yep.
years ago? So we can refer back to it?
Sure, that works great.
Anything else? Accept a motion? Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, gents, ladies.
Thank you so much.